always what would come back talking to anyone would be, but women, they can't, how can a bird fly with one wing? How can we have women uneducated and men educated? This needs to change. Why can girl not go to school after the age of 14 and stuff? So this was, yeah, this was, I wanted to hear that from people there, and I heard it. This was the one thing. The one thing is like we need to the next step would be that education comes back for women as much as for men in Afghanistan, and that's what this is my biggest hope, because I heard from Wahi men, fathers, talking about their daughters crying because they were going to get accepted to university, and Taliban moved in, and now they cannot, and this is destroying their life.
My guest today on the Sherazade Foundation mini podcast is a veteran French photographer, Matthieu Paley, whose amazing work in the wilds of northeastern Afghanistan has been published in National Geographic magazine. For more than 20 years, Matthieu has returned time and again to the Wakhan Corridor and the High Pamirs, following the Afghan Kyrgyz, a nomadic people scattered across a plateau. It's a realm often called the roof of the world, where my own Afghan grandfather traveled and photographed a century ago as a young man. In a time of what I would call vacuous influences and outright fakes, Matthieu is what I can only refer to as the real thing. While in the Wakhan Corridor, he learned to speak Kyrgyz, he carried letters between families, walked down frozen rivers in winter, and slept in smoke-filled yurts as well. He earned trust before he ever asked to start taking pictures, and that, to me, is the heart of his work. To believe that you can't photograph a land that you have not first tried to belong to. Matthieu, welcome. It's such a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Tahir. A few things listening to your intro. Am I a veteran? Because, yeah, after 25 years, it's been more than 20, it's 26 now. My first paycheck as a photographer, I got it one in 99. So that is in 99 or even in 98. So yeah, I guess you become a veteran past the 25-year mark or something.
You know, I don't think it's even time related. I think it's experience related. I think you can be a veteran after 2 weeks if you've just
probably,
you know, it just depends what you've seen and what you've endured and experienced. I'd love
and I just took a few notes from your intro just to correct a few things. And it's no big deal. I actually don't speak really Kyrgyz. I speak Wahi because and over the years, indeed, in the beginning, maybe from 2000, from 2000, the first time I ever walked kind of illegally from Pakistan into the Wakhan Corridor, in 2000 to about 2015, I was really focusing wherever I would be in the Wakhan on the Kyrgyz, which lives the Afghan Kyrgyz. They live at the end of the Wakhan Corridor, and it's a very hard place to reach, where back then you needed to walk. Now they have built a road in the last 3-4 years. So it's dramatically changed their life, and also realize the importance of, I mean, I want to be kind of grateful that I was able to spend a lot of time there before the road went there, because the road will change their life forever and their culture will erode and it will transform into something new. But I grabbed that thing before the road came in. And since about 10 years, I'm really focusing a lot more on the Wahi population, which are the people living in the Wakhan, in the lower elevation, before the extreme end of the Wakhan Corridor, before the High Pamirs. So yeah, that was just the thing. The thing about the roof of the world is also really interesting. In Farsi, maybe you know, it's called Bame Dunya. And it's been then used to describe Everest and other places, and people call these places roofs of the world. But it's in the mind in the Western mind, a roof needs to be how do you say, triangular, right? Shaped like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But in Central Asia and in Afghanistan, a roof is flat, right? It's made of, it's flat. Roofs are flat.
Exactly.
In the traditional mud houses, they're flat. And when you get to the high Pamir, you're climbing up through this canyon and you arrive in the high Pamir, which is the Bamedunya, and it is a big flat expanse surrounded by high peaks. That's where the name Roof of the World comes from. I always love that kind of little
No, I love that
language
too,
thing.
because, I'm sitting here in Casablanca, Morocco, and to me, all roofs are flat. I look out
Yeah,
over the city over there, and it's
yeah,
flat roofs, and people, maybe this is a deviation, but people use their roofs. They sit on the roof, they put out the
yes.
laundry, they're mixing wheat, trying to get the chaff off the wheat, off the grain. The roof is, it's the best bit of the house.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
Matthieu,
yeah, yeah.
take me back to the beginning of your your traveling life and how you got to Central Asia in the first place.
Okay, I'll give you a synthesized, like a summarized version, because I've done talks that last over an hour just to explain the unraveling, the wonderful and mysterious unraveling of how it happened. Well, so I'm born in north of France, in Normandy, and as many French students that don't know what they want to do, I ended up doing something that I really didn't like and was really not meant to do, but just because I didn't know what to do. So I studied business, international trade. I wanted to specialize on Asia. I had a call for Asia, so I even studied in this subsection on international trade with Asia. I learned Korean back in north of France in Le Havre. Eventually, I swore to myself on the last year that I would study something that I love, and I loved theater and I love photography. And then juggling both, I decided to go for photography. I managed to go to New York. I did a very short study in New York, 1.5 years, and at the end of that year, I put myself. I raised some money to go to Mongolia, and I crossed Mongolia on foot. And I started this relationship with photography and walking, which is still what is most significant for me. The act of walking and also being immersed, and the slowness that it creates, and the immersion and the creative space that it does to you. Um, one thing leading to another. I ended up in North Pakistan, volunteering in a small village near Skardu in Baltistan, and then uh, quickly realized I wasn't cut out to teach English to little kids. And then I started to get NGO work, and one thing leading to another. Also, I started to get interested in the part of North Pakistan that is bordering the Wakhan Corridor and Afghanistan. And I eventually, in August 2000, maybe walked for the first time, kind of more or less illegally into the Wakhan, into Afghanistan. I say more or less because Wahi people are on both sides of the border. To them, it's nonsense that there is a border. And I was going with some of these guys, and it was not like, to them, it was like, you want to go on the other side to Afghanistan? Yeah, of course, come along. But I was sensitive to the fact that, yeah, I didn't have a visa or whatever. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. So I started to do this small, like little dip into the Wakhan corridor. Walked into this no man's land, really, in this very high, remote part of the Wakhan, in high altitude, over a high pass, over 5,000 meters. And I did that for a few years until I saw some Kyrgyz nomads coming into Pakistan, and I realized that there were Kyrgyz living in Afghanistan. And I knew I had been in Kyrgyzstan maybe back then. That's maybe 2002 that I first saw the Kyrgyz caravan coming into Pakistan. I was like, what the hell are Kyrgyz coming? Kyrgyzstan is far north.
Yeah.
And then I realized there was a Kyrgyz community in Afghanistan. Back then, I'm talking 2000, 2001, there was barely anything on the internet. I mean, I was just starting to use the internet. And I got a hold of a couple of books written by anthropologists, Sharani, for example, who is an Afghan anthropologist based in the US, Rémi Dor, a French guy, a few books, which I still have. And then I started this really long relationship that lasted to still, I was there last September. So it's been 25, 26 years of going back and forth, eventually creating a long-term project on the Kyrgyz initially. And that opened the doors to National Geographic, after having worked with all kind of magazines, um, and yeah, now more the Wakhan. And one thing that was quite important early on in my career is that I was living in Pakistan on September 11, and I realized how the world looked at Pakistan, Afghanistan, this whole region, basically any country that ended with the word Stan, with fear and almost anger and all this stuff. And to me, it felt like complete nonsense because I had been there on September 11, and I realized the shock of local people in seeing what had happened in the US and how they were pained by it, and but how also they realized that this will fall back on their head eventually, which it did. So one of my big then um, job I felt um, deeply for was to always work on stories, that would to a degree break stereotypes of that region. And this is what I've been doing on and off. I've worked all over the world, but my specialty is kind of, yeah, the Western Himalaya, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, and the Pamir, still to this
And,
day.
I mean, thank you, Matthieu. And while you're saying all of that, I'm thinking to myself, from my own journeys in Afghanistan, and I haven't been, to the northeast, but I've traveled quite widely around Afghanistan. What is interesting to me is Afghans are quite bad at doing publicity for their country. Because they're Afghans, and Afghans are they're living these lives that would be impossible anywhere else. In a way, I've got goosebumps saying this because, in a way, it's almost like a medieval way of living, which is just based on honor, chivalry, respect, these core values and humor as well. We were brought up with the stories
Oh yeah,
of Mullah Nasruddin, the wise fool,
yeah, of course.
And
Yes.
something that I love, having learned about your work is you're never, okay, you're a very serious photographer and very respected, obviously, but you're very humorous. And that's something that
Oh my God, Tahir,
and that
this is so important.
I think it is the key thing, and I just want to
And
throw out one thing that just flashed into my head. When I traveled around Afghanistan 20 years ago now, I was making a documentary looking for the lost treasure of Ahmed Shah Durrani. And someone
okay,
said to me, take a hoopoe, Shanasarat, a hoopoe bird, hoopoe, in a
yeah,
cage.
yeah.
And and so I took this hoopoe bird in a bamboo cage wherever I went, even on an aeroplane at one point on Khmer. And my point is, Afghans
Great.
melted. Even huge,
Yeah,
strong, burly Afghans with bandoliers, they were like the little bird, And Afghans have this strange dichotomy of seriously strong, but also very, very gentle. Do you know what I mean?
100%, 100%, man. I'm 100% getting it, and it's also what you know plays with your mind when you're there, because you see this big guy with a big mustache or even a gun or whatever coming towards you, and you're like, he's for sure gonna kidnap me, and then I'm gonna have a very slow, painful death. And then minutes later, you can literally roll on the ground, giggling, touching each other, and it's all good. There is this thing that we make up in our mind, and then there's reality. And this part of the world, you're saying Afghanistan, but I also really, Pakistan for me
Yeah,
falls in that same thing, in terms of the laughter and what you can make up in your mind, and yeah, and the sense and the lightness in the end of being like, you know what, we're just a rock in the middle of the universe, take it easy. And this not playing by the rules, like, we don't need to advertise our country. You come and see for yourself, you
yeah,
just like, it's kind of that, but that laughter that you're saying that I carry in me, it's part, we can go deep. It's also because I'm an anxious person, and sometimes when you're in the field, it's this high powered stuff. You have a vision, you have a dream, you really like want to get it, and it's mixed with anxiety, and laughter is a way to diffuse that, is a way to bring joy. Because I can do anything I want. I can say to these people, the work I'm doing is going to help you for XYZ. I can, I can hope that it will change their life of the better or whatever. I can think all this, but this might not work out. But me on that day being there, bringing joy and laughter, this is a guaranteed thing when I leave and giving some good emotion behind me of people who are like, oh, this guy was nice. I hope he comes back. You
Exactly.
know,
And you know,
that is something I can give for guaranteed, right? So I want to do
exactly.
that.
Matthieu, exactly. Um, you know, earlier this morning I was looking at some pictures that you had taken in Wakhan, and one of them showed it was the interior, I think, of a yurt or a house, and it was a family, and there was a little boy whose face caught my eye, and his expression
Mhm.
caught my eye, and maybe he was 6 years old, maybe younger, and he was like, "What the hell is going on? Who is this guy?" And I was thinking about it, looking at this picture, and I was thinking, for this little boy, this is like a space alien has just
Yeah,
beamed
yeah,
down
a
from
bit.
the mothership, right? And so
Well,
what you do is you it's almost like a a dog or a horse rolling on its back, showing
yeah.
you're not threatening. I think that's
No, 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 no,
super
no.
important.
Well, I can play with that. I can play threatened. I can play threatened. No, but one big thing you forgot that is that this kid is looking at me like this, not because of how it's because I behave, but I'm doing it in Wahi. I'm speaking Wahi. So
Right.
there's this white guy who's speaking my language. Am I tripping? Is this for real? And then on top of it, he makes these stupid comments and he's so funny. So yes, I want to bring that idea also that I represent something when I'm there. I'm this white guy that comes from a foreign land, that comes with all these maybe stereotypes on their end. I'm breaking stereotypes on both sides of, seriousness
Yeah.
and education and, proper and this and that. I don't want to go by these rules because I don't want to fall into a box as much as I don't want them to fall into a box. So I'll do everything in my power to break that, and that creates this very beautiful surreal situation of eventually love and kindness, and also in between that there's moments of beauties, where I'm going to be there. So I'm going to play this like what you're saying, rolling on my back or whatever, but then I will know when to stop and let things fall back. It's almost like putting dust in the air and then let that dust fall quietly, and now I'm not playing around anymore. I just want to disappear slowly, and there the picture comes in maybe slowly here and there over periods of time, yeah, over years, over days, over
Exactly.
hours, whatever.
And
Mhm.
I mean, as you're saying that, what's coming into my head is the massive value of going back to a place again and again and
Yes,
again. And what
yes,
pisses me off is when writers or photographers, particularly working for a magazine, they'll turn up in a place, they'll get a local fixer, they'll scout the place, and then in 3 days they're gone. But because I think what works is to keep going back to a place, because
yes,
the key point is you change over time, and so the way
that too.
you're looking at the place changes through your eyes. Do you see that too?
Yeah, 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 100%. I mean, I was never, you're talking about parachute journalism, right?
Right.
And I was never, and I did that in the beginning because you're taking any job to, and this actually happened in October 2000, after September 11. Um, one time, I think, asked me and was going to pay me for 2, 3 days. And, in the beginning of my career, I've been published maybe by a couple of magazines. It was going to be an opportunity to work for time, and I did this, and I went in the street and I photographed angry Pakistanis burning US flags and all this stuff. And then I realized the nonsense of this, like this kind of hot news where you have no perspective on what's going on, but still you want to draw conclusion to what's going on by photographing this and that will come with captions and statement about the situation there that we don't understand. We have no way to pull back, and as it turned out, it's a lot more complex. um, So yeah, so then I realized this was not going to be my job. I was not going to do hot hot news. I was going to go cold news, and take my time and go back and avoid this kind of hurried conclusions as to what's going on. Or because yes, I ended up spending a lot of my time in places where there's this kind of reporting to be done, and I never war or conflict reporting. I would run up to the hills and find all these beautiful mini stories, or that would grow into these bigger stories. And also that in the end paid off, just following my heart and doing my work that I feel I'm meant to do. And nothing against other this other. I mean, I think hot news has its own value, but also big limitation, because yes, it happens too fast, and we want to draw conclusion, and people want drama, and we'll come up with this and that will actually not help.
You know, I mean, I couldn't agree more, actually. And I think it's not just the opposite of hot news. It's slow. It's not even news.
Mhm.
It's slow
Yeah, yeah,
appreciation. And
yeah, you're right.
um, I loved that.
Yeah, I mean, just to cut you here, I never felt like a journalist. When people tell me that I'm a photojournalist, I remove the journalist out. I'm a photographer. I take pictures.
Yeah.
What is journalism? I mean, this is like, yeah, I tell stories, or call me storyteller, call me photographer. I never really felt comfortable with the idea of journalism. It means it feels too instant and too close to the news,
Well,
and
I
and,
love
and
that. I love, Matthieu, that you
and
worked
too
with.
fast, too
Right,
fast.
fast. So I love that you worked with Paul Salopek on his Out of
Yeah,
Eden walk. And I've been in
that
touch
was
with him.
amazing.
I've been in touch with him over the years, of his walk. And
You,
I'm just such a fan, because he's a storyteller like
he's
me.
an
And
incredible guy too.
he described you as a zorba of a man. I don't,
Yeah,
and he said that you were doing a wahi dance as you went down the riverbank, and everybody loved it. And
yeah,
what
maybe.
I think it was the perfect marriage in a way, because just like you say, you tried to work slow, and he is working slow because his Out of Eden walk is walking around the world. And and I think you're absolutely right. Progressing at walking speed is almost the only way to do it, because anything faster than that, you miss everything.
Yes, yes, 100%. I'm grateful. I got a grant from the Niger Society a year ago that exactly focuses on that, on the act of walking. Looking at my heroes, there are people going on foot, not people like Paul Salopek, but people that have done that all their life for traditional reasons. The people going in high pastures, the people gathering food, um, uh, pilgrims going around. I was just in India a couple of months ago to photograph the longest pilgrimage on foot around the Narmada River in central India. And yes, we strive to go faster and faster, and we've been quite successful in being faster in the way we communicate, we move our bodies around the world, etc. But I think the value, if it's time to give value to your work, the act of walking, which is the least efficient way, right, to move from A to B. I mean, you could crawl, but even cycling is too fast for me. The act of walking is incredible in what it does to you over long periods.
But
You can walk 2 hours today, it's great. But if you go for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks of walking, there's really chemistry changing in your brain that goes
exactly,
back to who we
exactly.
are.
because because surely there's no surprise that pilgrimages have been going on for millennia because of the harnessing of the brain and the feet, because
Yeah,
we just know that when I'm in this office and I at home here and I can't get an idea, I just walk up and down, and suddenly
yeah,
a part of my brain is activated by my feet. I don't know how it works. It's kind of a Mullah
yeah,
Nasruddin thing,
yeah,
but it definitely works. And you know, you're making me think of in the 80s and 90s, I was great friends with a famous British explorer at the end of his life. He was called Wilfrid Thesiger, Sir Wilfrid Thesiger, and he had
Excuse me,
crossed,
I've read his book and I
right.
know of him. Yes, of
So he
course, the
had
Karakoram work.
exactly. So he had crossed the Rub al Khali twice in the 50s and so on. And
Right.
he said to me that when he was in Arabia crossing the desert, I said, "Did you ride camels? Because it would have been faster." And he said, "No, only a madman would have ridden a camel because firstly, it's very uncomfortable." But then I remember his exact words. He said, "If you're going faster than walking pace and you see something on the ground, like an interesting stone or a flower or a bone, and you're going on a camel, you'll not come back. You won't come back. And if you're walking, you can just stoop down and pick it up." And those
I
words are
love
always
that.
in my head.
Love that. I love that, and thank you for that. I will keep it in mind. I'll say it's mine from now on. No,
Thesiger
no,
will send a lightning bolt
yeah.
from heaven.
No, no,
Now,
but it's and imagine me. Imagine me. I'm a photographer. I mean, Wilfred Thesiger was in a way also a photographer.
yeah,
His photo work is amazing. I was looking through the Chapursan Valley. He photographed the Chapursan Valley. He photographed relatives of the people I've hung
wow.
out for the last 25 years. And yes, how will you ever see that? I've done my share of. I was in. Yeah, I mean, like one thing I remember, I was in Mongolia recently, and it was a thing about photographing Mongolia's government, the plan they have of having 30% of their territory by 2030. So I was looking at all these different national parks in 2 weeks, and I would drive by Jeep, you go bam, 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 bam. There's always a level of frustration in me when I'm doing that, and I'm trying as I grow older and maybe wiser to put myself in situation where I don't do that. I'm going to be slow. Whatever I do, I'm going to be slow and it's not going to go fast and the quality will be there and they will be more paying attention to what you're saying, to this little thing passing you at the walking speed.
You, something else Thesiger used to say is that, okay, firstly, okay, he was old school. So firstly, he had never, I asked him once if he had taken a color photography, and he was horrified. He said, "Who would ever take color pictures?" But then he said to me, "I only ever take one photograph of anything." And
Wow.
and I liked that because
Very much.
that is also totally focusing. You take one picture of something, and I've worked with photographers for magazines who take, and now it's digital, they take tens of thousands. It's crazy. But
Yes.
there's something
Yes.
about, I think it's acting in line with the slowness, just going back and focusing more.
Yeah, I mean, when I have colleagues or people like photographers that are like, I am back, I have like 10,000 images to go through. I'm like, wow, you really don't. I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm like, you are unsure about what is good and what is bad, so that you have to do in a week 10,000 images. I mean, unless you're photographing sport or something where it's really fast, yeah. But yes, I will be the same. And when I first went on my first assignment for National Geographic magazine in 2011, I remember my editor Elizabeth Chris, who was a little bit shocked. She's like, "You only photographed 3,000 images in 5 weeks." But then she loved the story. It ended up being a 36 pages, story, which was like as big as it came. So yes, you need to slow down. You need to pick your moment. I'm going to take more than one, especially when it comes to portrait and things like that. Um, it gives you a bit of thing. Like I also love to, I photograph when if it's going to be more like a kind of a more set up portrait, I'm going to photograph the moment that people expect me to photograph, is the moment where they are in position and they are ready and they are standing there and I take that picture. But everything that happens before, when you enter and exit the image, for me is always a lot more. I love this threshold of being entering the image and exiting the image. So there I will take also a few shots that often are really interesting, because the guard falls off, right? You're like, and I would say, oh, I'm done. Sure enough, I'll take more pictures, knowing, so that people let go and their shoulder will lower and their gaze will move, and that can be a lot
And
more.
actually, you've reminded me how in Afghanistan everyone, okay, it's a little bit like in the old days of telephones. I remember when I was a kid, people would, maybe they didn't in France, but in England, they'd have what they called a telephone voice. They put on this hello, hello. And
Yes.
in Afghanistan, there's the same sort of thing. When a camera is put up, everyone, all the men have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
like, I don't know,
yeah, yeah.
statues. And
Yeah, so I have a few tricks. Sometimes I will tell them, can you put your hat back on or whatever? So, because often people don't know what to do with their hands. They're a little bit, and so they would move their hands, and as they bring their arm down, then I'll take another, like asking them to do something or to divert their attention. It's a very aggressive move to take pictures of people. So there's a lot of psychology involved in diffusing that tension and giving doors for people to escape that tension, and then they come back tense again, and then you move things, and that's my favorite part of
yeah, it's
photography,
a
that
very
psychology.
it's an intimate thing, isn't it? Now I think of it, putting a
it's
camera
in,
lens
it's
in
very
someone's
it
face.
can be intimate, but it's also very aggressive. And I use medium format a lot, and I cannot shoot looking down, like the medium format, without
Mm.
bringing the camera to my eye. And I often use it, even though I can look through my eye, because the act of lowering my head and looking down, people feel less threatened by this machine that is the camera. So I find it in ways a bit aggressive. That's why all what you were saying, the laughter, the diversion, the speaking the language to diffuse that energy, and that allows me to get very intimate. My my ultimate goal is always reaching a level of intimacy. I always say that I want to photograph people when they are brushing their teeth. I'm not going to go in bed with them, but I'm going to really come close to it because it is as intimate as it gets, right? That's what I like.
And with film versus digital, were you ever a fan of film, or you?
Yeah, I mean, I photographed film, and a lot of my early work in the Wakhan, for example, up to 2008, I was shooting film medium format as well. And when I started to have fundings and digital was moving it strong, uh, in in 2011, when I went back for National Geographic, then I was shooting digital but that means solar panel. That meant a computer that needed to be powered, that needed to back up, and all this stuff. What I feel very grateful for is having gone through that era of shooting film, because yes, as you said before, it's helping you to slow down, and you're going a little bit more into the mystery of photography, because you don't really know what you're doing, and because you don't know what you're doing, you might be doubtful, and you might try harder, as opposed to looking in the back of your screen and like, oh my God, I nailed it, and then moving on to something else, which is often not great. So I really tell a lot of people that are going into photography to try that, or even tape their, the screen, in the back or something, to challenge themselves, in
I
that
see
sense.
that my
But
kids.
yeah, I love film, and I always try to get the look of scanned negative. There's this warmth,
Yeah.
there's this open shadows, that I always loved, and so
But
now with my
Matthieu,
work,
I don't know about
yeah,
your kids, but my kids are fascinated with film. And over
yeah,
there
yeah,
in my
no,
office, I've got a lot of old film cameras and some of my father's and grandfather's cameras too. And my kids are
it's coming back
always
strong.
they're they're fascinated. Um,
Yeah,
are your kids
it's coming
interested in
back strong.
are your kids interested in film?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, in photography in general, in film and all this stuff, yes, they are. In music, I think, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think they will, maybe go into something that is creative like that, yeah, in the future.
Yeah. Look, Matthieu, thank you so much. I think we're out of time, but I really want to thank
Yeah.
you enormously for
I
spreading.
wanted to say one more thing, Tahir,
Please do.
is talking about Afghanistan, and I know that you're um, with your foundation with helping women, and um, I've been very lucky because I spent time in the Wakhan, And in the Wakhan, they are Ismaili. It's an Ismaili community, and it's extremely liberal. And also, one thing that drew me there is the accessibility of women, and as much as men, and actually the fact that Wakhi women are very much in charge in the household, and they have very much their position in the Ismaili community, and that's one thing that drew me there. And when I last went in September, which is now a Taliban controlled Afghanistan, um, there was this feeling that, okay, now we're at peace in Afghanistan because there's no foreign forces, and so they are not trying to unstabilize the country. But always what would come back, talking to anyone, would be, but women, they can't. How can a bird fly with one wing? How can we have women uneducated and men educated? This needs to change. Why can girl not go to school after the age of 14 and stuff? So I wanted to hear that from people there, and I heard it. This was the one thing. The one thing is like, we need to the next step would be that education comes back for women as much as for men in Afghanistan. And that's what this is my biggest hope, because I heard from Wakhi men, fathers, talking about their daughters crying because they were going to get accepted to university, and Taliban moved in and now they cannot. And this is destroying their life. They were hoping this woman was going to go study in university in China, because Wakhi have a lot of connection with Chinese university, and that turned out to be impossible. And this really broke my heart. So I really hope, and I hope, and thank you for the work you do with the foundation, that will be as much as I love Afghanistan, there's always room for improvement. And this is really the one thing.
No, thank you, Matthieu. And I think you summed it up with that. How can a bird fly with one wing? Matthieu Paley.
This is a saying from that Wakhi father. He said those words and they touched me, because, Persia, they are so good with allegories and analogies, and I thought, yeah, that's a beautiful image. And yes, how can a bird fly with one wing? Yeah.
Thank you, Matthieu. Thank you.
All right.